Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into what is very likely the Apostle Paul's final letter. I mean, think about it. This is a message written from death row, but it's one that has just echoed down through the centuries with this incredible wisdom on what it means to have faith, to endure, and to live with purpose. So to really get what's going on here, let's just start with a thought experiment. Imagine you knew your time was up. You have one last letter to write. One last message for someone you've mentored, someone you care about deeply. What do you say, right? What's the most important thing you need to tell them? Just kind of keep that question in the back of your mind, because that's exactly what we're about to see from Paul. And here's the thing. For Paul, this wasn't some theoretical exercise. The setting is a cold, dark Roman prison. He's literally awaiting execution. But his final thoughts, they aren't about himself. They're for Timothy, his protege, his, as he calls him, dearly beloved son. So what you have here is this incredibly urgent transfer of wisdom from a mentor at the very end of his race to the person he's trusting to carry the torch. So where does Paul start? Well, what's amazing is that his first focus isn't on his own suffering, not at all. He doesn't kick things off with complaints or talking about how scared he is. Instead, he goes straight to igniting Timothy's potential with some really direct personal encouragement. He tells Timothy, stir up the gift of God, which is in thee. He's basically saying, hey, don't let that gift inside you turn into dying embers. You know, that phrase, stir up, it's so active. It means you got to rekindle it, fan it back into a roaring flame. He's making it crystal clear that the power inside Timothy isn't meant to just sit there, all passive and dormant. No, it requires you to do something. And right away, Paul draws this sharp contrast between what holds us back, fear, and what God has actually given us. He's like, listen, the spirit you've been given is not one of fear or timidity. Instead, it's defined by these three really powerful qualities. Power, the ability to actually do something, love, which is the why behind it all, and a sound mind, which is the discipline that guides both of them. Let's dig into that last one for a second. A sound mind. This isn't just about, being calm. The original Greek word here is sophronismos, and it's packed with meaning. It's about self-control, discipline, sober, and clear-headed thinking. So in a world that's just full of chaos, Paul is calling Timothy to be totally stable and rational, disciplined from the inside out. Okay, so once you have that internal stability, it becomes the foundation for facing all the hardship that's coming from the outside. Paul knows Timothy is going to face some serious challenges, so he gives him this really practical framework for how to persevere. He doesn't sugarcoat it, he doesn't promise an easy road. In fact, he flat out tells him to endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. And to make this idea really stick, he uses three super vivid, real-world examples to drive home the point about what it takes to persevere. So you've got these three roles, right? And each one teaches something crucial. First, you have the soldier, who is completely focused on the mission, not getting tangled up in civilian life. Then there's the athlete, who knows you can't win unless you compete by the rules, with discipline. And finally, the farmer, who gets that you have to put in the hard work first to get the harvest. So what's the takeaway? Focus, discipline, and hard work. But here's the crucial point. This isn't just about gritting your teeth and pushing through. It's about smart endurance. Paul tells him to study, to be a workman that needeth not to be ashamed. He's saying, become an expert at what you do. Handle the truth with skill. Real endurance, for Paul, is built on a foundation of competence. All right, so after building Timothy up with all this encouragement, Paul kind of shifts gears. The tone changes. Now he gives a pretty stark, pretty sober warning about the kind of world Timothy is going to have to deal with. And again, he doesn't pull any punches. He's very direct. He says, in the last days, perilous times shall come. He wants Timothy to be ready, to be prepared for this big slide in social and moral character so that he isn't caught off guard. He needs to lead with clarity, not confusion. And wow, the list he gives in chapter 3, it's a really chilling look at a culture that's just turned completely inward. He talks about a society where people are lovers of themselves, lovers of money, lovers of pleasure, more than lovers of God. But maybe the most cutting part of the whole warning is that these people will have a form of godliness, but deny the real power behind it. It's a powerful critique of faith that's just superficial. So the big question is, what's the anchor in all this chaos? When the whole culture is drifting, how is Timothy supposed to stand firm? Well, Paul gives him a very clear, very unshakable answer. The foundation, Paul says, is the scripture. That's it. He doesn't point to some new program or a fancy strategy. He points to the timeless word. He calls it God-breathed, which means divinely inspired. And because of that, it's not just useful, it's completely reliable. This is Timothy's anchor. It's non-negotiable. And then he breaks down why it's so profitable. He gives these 4 key functions. First, for doctrine. That's for teaching you what is right. Then, for reproof, for pointing out what's not right. Then for correction, that's how to get right. And finally, for instruction in righteousness, which is how to stay right. It's basically a complete toolkit for living a life of faith. And this all leads us to the end of the letter. And this is where the tone gets really, really personal. Paul turns the camera, so to speak, back on his own life because he knows his time is almost up. You can just feel the finality in his words here. For I am now ready to be offered. He's not fighting it. He's facing it with this incredible sense of peace. He sees his death not as a loss, but as a final offering, a departure to something greater. And then we get to what's probably the most famous line in the whole letter. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. It's just this powerful, personal statement from a man who lived with 0 regrets. And look at how he ties it all back to the metaphors he just gave Timothy. The fight of the soldier, the race of the athlete. He's saying, I did it. I crossed the finish line. I kept the faith. So with his own race just about finished, and with a totally clear conscience, Paul has one last thing to say. He turns his focus back to Timothy one final time for one last urgent command. And this is it. The torch is officially passed. The final charge is simple. It's direct. Preach the word. He says be ready in season, out of season, which basically means do it when it's popular and do it when it's not. Use that whole toolkit. Reprove, rebuke, exhort. The message is clear. The work has to go on no matter what. And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? It brings this ancient letter right into our lives today, because this isn't just some old historical document. It's a blueprint for what it means to mentor someone, what it means to endure, and what it means to finish well. Paul finished his race, so the question for all of us is, how are we going to run ours?